I came way late, and Greg, my brother, did 2 years later, almost 3. There were 7 when I was born.
Mm-hmm.
And Isidore was 11 when I was born. The next thing was, my oldest brother was 23, I think, or 24 when I was born. They were all 2 years apart.
Wow.
And I don't know, I suppose I was supposed to be there. That was God's will. I don't know if it's Mom's will or
They were
Dad's
happy
will.
to see you.
We had a very, very good, I had good parents. Very good parents. My dad was older than my mom, and my mom was the dominant one. But when I think of it now, Dad always had the last word. You know, he was very a man of few words. My mother was, you know, she would maybe talk to anybody, and she was just a wonderful one. Mom, Dad was too, but he was a man of fewer words than Mom. We had a farm. Yes, my dad came from Poland when he was 18 to escape the German army. Because he knew, I guess there was some abuse, you know, and so he came with just clothes he had on and a blanket.
Wow.
And Uncle Paul was here, and so Dad met him in New York, and they worked on the railroad.
And what year would this have been? The 1880s? Or
Dad was born in 63, and he came here when he was 18. How old was he?
Yeah, so 1881.
In 81, that's when he came here.
Mm-hmm.
And they would earn enough money and then send a pet or wrote to the rest of the family, anybody wanted to come. Uncle Joe came with 6 kids. It's Helmin, and then Frank. They were 5. And Paul and Dad. Uncle Adam was single, and Aunt Eva, she was the only girl. Now they brought them all over, so they sent a passport, and they'd come. So they worked hard.
Yeah.
And I often wondered how they made that. How, you know. But they did, and they lived. All of them lived around Gilman, Bendyville, Foley. My mom was 2 years old when she came, so she doesn't remember. And they lived in St. Paul till she was, well, I don't know how old she was. They came to Minnesota. They lived on a farm then too.
And what kind of farm did your parents have? Dairy, or were you growing crops?
They all had all those stumps and trees. They had a pull out, and it was a lot of forest. Because Mom said after she married, she'd have to walk through the woods, and often she'd meet some Indian, she always called them, Indian people, you know, man or woman, and she said she was afraid of them.
Who would she meet?
Indian people.
Yeah, they
were people. And I thought, she was afraid of them. So I had that fear. It was not, she didn't make it that they did anything to her, but she'd meet them and she didn't know them, and so she'd walk across the field, across the woods to Grandma's house, to her mom and dad's house, after she married it, you know. And she walked through the woods, so it must have been pretty thick.
Yeah.
And there must have been some Native Americans living there too, around there.
Huh.
They lived in a log house. I know my brothers, the log house was built I was born in 12. Our house where I was born was built in 1908. And my brother Leo especially, you kids, Greg and I, he said, you kids have it made. We used to, when we wake up in the morning, we'd see snow on our bedding.
Wow.
Because
they were in the log
between the, you know, I can imagine. Well, that's how they started. But really never suffered, because we lived on a farm. I never really experienced, like some of the sisters say, did hardly anything to eat. The older ones would say, we never had that. I never experienced that. Maybe my older brothers and sisters. I had a sister that was married. The oldest sister, she was 21, and her son was 2 years old when I was born.
Mm-hmm.
So I was an aunt right away.
Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, my niece was born just a year after me. And last night I had a telephone call from her daughter who lives in the cities. That's the only child they had because my niece died when she was 27. I was 28. That was one of the hardest things. We were very close because they used to stay at our house. We lived only half a mile from Gilman, the Catholic school, and the kids, Anna's kids, stayed at our house to go to school. So I got very close. But she died of a heart attack and had this little girl who was only 3. But Roseanne. So last night we had a nice visit. But she's like, very close because she was raised by her mom and grandma and grandpa.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.